Hello there folks, and welcome back to the Books for Young Men series. Today I am going to be recommending Kitchen by Banana Yoshimoto. Kitchen by Banana Yoshimoto is a book all about grief, belonging, finding oneself, community, love, the individual, the collective. It is genuinely a very beautifully written book. I'm only going to be talking about Kitchen. Oftentimes when you buy Kitchen, it comes not an actual kitchen from like Ren.
The Great Renovation.
But the book Kitchen. That's such a British joke. The book Kitchen often comes with another short story called Moonlight Shadow, which is also very good. I enjoyed it, but we won't be talking about that today. But when you buy the book, you usually get that short story at the end of your edition as well, at least the one I had. But Kitchen, why am I recommending it to young men to read? I think for 2 or 3 reasons. One, it talks about social isolation and the harms of isolation and how to get over isolation. 2, it talks about grief and guilt. So the two are kind of intertwined. That's something that I think young men in particular aren't really taught to deal with properly, at least from my own personal experience. I don't believe that's the case. And 3, it talks about trans issues, which is something that's very big at the moment. We're going to start off with that last point, the trans issues that we're facing in the world and how it's addressed in Kitchen. But before we start, let's very quickly actually talk about Banana Yoshimoto. Banana Yoshimoto, there's not actually a lot known about her. She's very good at keeping her life very private. She does come from a progressive family, I mean at the very least from Japanese standards, but you can see that in her writing, the way she talks about trans individuals, she talks about relationships, and this book is also from the 80s, by the way, the late 80s. But very progressive and forward-thinking. I believe like her father was a famous cartoonist, her mother and her sister both worked in the arts and entertainment sector as well. So although Yoshimoto doesn't talk so much about her politics and her personal life, we kind of get the image of the kind of person she is throughout this book. But yeah, back to talking about trans identity. So there is a character called Eriko who is trans in this book, and the way Eriko's story is handled really like sympathetically and heartwarmingly. Yes, there are characters and individuals who in the book are, you know, weird about Eriko. They say things to and about Eriko that, you know, is just like offensive. Even at the time and even now, it's just offensive to say those things. But the way the narrator talks about Eriko is humanized. Eriko isn't necessarily seen as, this is Eriko, she's trans. Eriko is a human who is trans, if that makes sense. And sort of the story with which Eriko transitioning, you know, it's a bit out there, I'll be honest, or at least, I mean, I've not seen kind of an example of it, but kind of the reason Eriko transitions is slightly like different. Like Eriko is treated as a pariah by like her in-laws, but she feels happy about it. You know, she doesn't regret it. She is, you know, happy for this decision she's made and joyful from it. And I think that's also a positive thing. But then, I mean, prior to her transitioning, she was going through a bout of depression. But importantly, Yoshimoto doesn't make it seem like, oh, Eriko transitioned because they were depressed. No, they got through their depression and they got through that and then they transitioned and then they were even happier for it. Which I think there's this like stigma that's put onto trans people where they're like, oh, that person's just got mental health issues, that's why they're trans. And like, that's an extremely conservative right-wing way of viewing this. And perhaps some people who are trans may have mental health issues, but we know part of that reason, or a good chunk of that reason, is because of the way society treats them. I mean, you only need to look at, there was a news story that came out during the week prior to me filming this video where 2.8 million Americans identified as trans, and the right-wing media went crazy, like, oh my god, they're everywhere, there's so many. And then you look at like the population statistics and it's like, that's less than 1% of the US population. And on top of that, you know, that's not necessarily people who have transitioned, that's not necessarily people who, you know, there are people who do, you know, detransition as well. That's not including them in the figures either. So it's like, it's a culture war, it's a scapegoat, you need a scapegoat. And Eriko isn't quite scapegoated in this, but you see that that very negative energy that we see directed towards trans people, directed towards Eriko through characters in the book, not through the narrator themselves, which it's really great. It's a great way of seeing Eriko. She's very humanized, and I think it's something that's important for young men to read, because social media is a hellscape, and I'm slowly trying to get away from that. And on that hellscape, you are basically seeing just people who are clearly, aren't educated on this issue, or are people who are deliberately subverting what's going on to sell courses, to make money off of this fear tactic. It's a very common thing from authoritarian individuals and regimes and through capitalism. So it's important for young men to actually experience characters who are human, who are humanized, minorities who are humanized. It's very sad that I need to say, hey, fellas, read this book with a trans person and maybe you'll treat trans people like humans, hopefully. It's sad that I need to do that, but unfortunately it kind of seems like it has to be the case for me to present characters like Eriko like that now. Moving on to part 2, which is finding yourself. Finding yourself is, I think, something a lot of young people and even old people like myself struggle with. And this book, I think, I want to link this to community as well, actually. Finding yourself isn't really a task that you do on your own. That sounds weird, it's like you're finding yourself, but finding yourself, at least the way Yoshimoto puts it forward, is our main character Mikage has an idea of what she likes, what she wants to do, and she's gone through this thing that's happened in her life, and you know, it's put everything into perspective, or it's thrown everything out of whack as well, and so she doesn't really know what she wants. But the Tanabas, Yuichi, who we'll talk about later, and Eriko, actually, you know, help her. They help her discover her passion. And even when she's figuring it out, particularly Eriko is there to kind of spur her on, to give Mikage kind of like, oh, you know what, you're really good at doing this. Why don't you think about that? Oh, why don't you do this because you're really good at that? You can help me by doing this. You know, you can make me soup. You could bake X, Y, or Z. Because you in particular are great at that. And it helps Mikage kind of flourish and find herself. And then about, is it halfway, maybe 2/3 of the way through the novella, Mikage kind of is like, she has the epiphany, she knows what she's doing, and then the last third, she is doing that thing that Yuichi and Eriko helped her find, and that's great, and that's kind of something we need to do. You know, if you're a young guy, you don't know what you're doing, I get it, you know, my entire life has been, I don't know what I'm doing, but if you want to find what you're doing, you need to not only actually try different things. Mikage does try, you know, it's not wholly on everyone else to help her. She tries it, and she knows she likes something, and she tries to do it, and she loves it. But also, find people who will help you, who will push you in doing that. Whether it be your family, your friends, a mentor, a teacher, someone to really kind of, at the very least, inspire you or back you to try something. It might not be what you want. I mean, in the book, Mikage kind of already goes to what she wants straight away, so not the best example there. But if it's something you think you like, you do it, it doesn't turn out to be what you like, that's still good. You know, it's an experience. Having experiences is like one of the best things in life. There are times, anecdotes also aren't the best thing, but in my life, I've done loads of different experiences to try and do something, which is awesome, but there's also experiences I've like turned down, unfortunately, and I never regret doing the weird stuff I've done in my life, even if it inconvenienced me significantly at points. But I really regret not doing the stuff that I wanted to experience but decided not to, pulled out, got scared, whatever. I regret that way more than stuff that like may have inconvenienced me and those around me. Obviously not to like a super negative extent, like don't do something where it's like, I've ruined my family's finances forever.
Yes, Mr. Casino, my husband didn't eat his vegetables, so don't let him gamble.
Don't do that. That's a bad idea. But if you're like, I want to do painting, go off and take some art classes or something, man. It's good. It's good. And find people to push you and support you in doing that, even if you don't necessarily know it's the right path. And finally, I want to talk about guilt and grief. We'll look at Yuichi a little bit more here, but also we're going to look at Mikage as well, just because I don't want to give you spoilers, and Yuichi's grief is kind of very spoiler heavy compared to Mikage's, which happens on like the second paragraph of the book, or at least some of her grief. So Yuichi and Mikage go through an experience. I don't know what the experiences are. I've completely forgotten. I don't know what they are, obviously. But they go through something and they both react in similar ways, but the way they go about it is different, but eventually they reach a good point. And that's because of one thing, which is community and support. When Mikage is going through her grief, she has community and support around her, and importantly, she accepts it. She takes the help. She, even reluctantly, she takes it. Just like before we were talking about community and those around you helping you, Mikage takes it, and that's important. Because later on down the line, Yuichi goes through guilt and grief, and he is very resistant to community. He's very resistant to getting help. He only asks for help at one point after he's gotten very inebriated. This is my word of wisdom for the day. Don't get really inebriated to deal with your grief and stuff. I get it. It's rough. But maybe it's not the best idea. But I don't know. I'm not your dad. I hope. But anyway, Yuichi is really resistant to getting that help, that community to help deal with his grief. And even though he when he starts taking it, even reluctantly, he slowly gets better. Even when he's taking it, he's resistant. Even to the very end of the book. It really takes Mikage going out of her way to really show him, look man, your grief, I get it. I understand it. You should, go into it. You shouldn't bury it deep within you. You should go through it, deal with it. But I'm here for you. She pulls off this feat just to show him she is there for him. And he's like, damn, shawty, I get it. Not necessarily, but kind of. And the book kind of ends openly, sort of. Well, the novella, opens sort of openly, ends openly. I'm all over the place. But it's really great to see where Yuichi is at that point of the book and how he's seemingly getting to a point where Mikage has already reached at this point in the book. Now that was me just recommending Banana Yoshimoto's Kitchen to you. The images I'll probably have been used throughout this video have come from the two adaptations of Kitchen. There was a Japanese television adaptation which came out like a year after the book came out, which apparently isn't the best, and then there's a Hong Kong studio production. The studio is not called Hong Kong Studio, it's a studio in Hong Kong in I think 1991 where they adapted the book as well. So if there's pictures of people, and I'm talking about like Yuichi and there's two different dudes, he didn't like Inception you to be two of him, it's just two different movies, unless you believe in like movies of a connected universe type thing, which I'd be very interested in hearing your theory about in the comments down below. Also, I'd love to hear in the comments down below your thoughts on Kitchen. if you have already read it. By the way, you don't need to be a young man to have to read Kitchen. If you are a young man and you're watching this and you're like, oh, can I read Kitchen? Of course you can read Kitchen. You can also pick it up from the description down below from Waterstones and also Bookshop, which works with small independent booksellers to get them a little bit more of a kickback when you buy through them. Alternatively, go to your local library and get it. They should definitely have a copy of Kitchen. If not, request it. Pretty sure you can request books to the library. Before we sign off, I want to say a special thank you to my members. Members get bonus episodes. They're going to be part of a book club. They're going to be part of a movie club. So you can become a member from as little as £1 a month. If not, thank you for getting to this part of the video. I really appreciate it. Remember to like, subscribe, share the video with a friend or family member. And hey, go and read Kitchen. It's great. You don't necessarily need to remodel your own kitchen, but read Kitchen if you'd rather.